welcome to Serving for Fitness. My name is Arif and today we're going to talk on carbohydrates. We're going to discuss how carbohydrates are digested, how it's absorbed and how it's metabolized in the human body. So before we begin with the digestion process, we'll just have a brief overview of carbohydrates. So what are carbohydrates? They're basically organic compounds and they are bonds of oxygen, carbon and hydrogen. The simplest form of carbohydrates are called monosaccharides. They are also called as simple sugar. And examples of monosaccharides can be glucose, fructose, and galactose. What are disaccharides? Basically, when two monosaccharides combine, they form something called as disaccharides. And examples of disaccharides are sucrose, lactose, and maltose. You can see here, glucose is combining with the fructose to form sucrose, that's a table sugar. Glucose combines with galactose to form lactose, which is found in the milk. And glucose combines with another molecule of glucose to form maltose. So what are polysaccharides? When glucose combines with n number of glucose molecules, they form a complex structure called polysaccharides. They are also called as complex carbs. So example of polysaccharides will be starch and glycogen. So what is the basic purpose of digestion of carbohydrates? It is breaking down these polysaccharides into its simpler constituents, monosaccharides. Okay, there's one more thing I want to explain about energy. The energy that we get from the foods we eat, be it carbohydrate, protein or fats, has to get converted into this molecule called ATP. It is adenosine triphosphate. So it undergoes a reaction called hydrolysis to produce adenosine diphosphate, a free phosphate and energy. So we have covered the overview of carbohydrates. And now we will begin with the process of digestion. So when we eat any kind of carbohydrates, be it starch, rice, chapati, so when the carbohydrates is in the mouth, it is acted upon an enzyme secreted by the salivary gland. It's called the salivary amylase. And what does this enzyme do? It starts breaking down the polysaccharides into its smaller constituents. So after chewing your food, it goes down through the esophagus into your stomach. And what happens in the stomach is, since the environment in the stomach is very acidic, the effect of the salivary amylase starts to diminish. Now the food from the stomach begins to go into the small intestine. And it reaches to the first portion of the small intestine called the duodenum. The food is here right now. Okay. Now in the duodenum, what happens is a special enzyme secreted by the pancreas called the pancreatic amylase. So this pancreatic amylase now does the same function as the salivary amylase, breaking the polysaccharides into its smaller constituents. And the final breakdown of the polysaccharide into its monosaccharides occurs at the jejunum portion of the small intestine. So we have special enzymes called the brush border enzymes. So we have your polysaccharides breaking down to maybe disaccharides, trisaccharides, oligosaccharides. But now they have to be broken down into its smallest constituent, that's monosaccharides, in the jejunum. And it's because of the brush border enzyme. So your sucrose, which is a disaccharide, is getting broken down to glucose and fructose, and because of a special enzyme called sucrase. Your lactose is broken down to glucose and galactose because of a special enzyme called lactase. And similarly, maltase. So now that your polysaccharide is completely broken down into smallest monomer called the monosaccharides, and it is now ready to be absorbed into the blood. So we now will discuss on the absorption of carbohydrates. Like we discussed earlier, we have the monosaccharides, glucose, fructose, galactose over here in the jejunum of the small intestine. So let me zoom into this part of the small intestine. Okay, you see here, this is the direction of food going to the ileum. Now we have Mr. Glucose, fructose, galactose all accumulated here, and they are waiting to get transported into the blood. We see these small projections on the line of the small intestine. They are called the villi. So we'll zoom into one of the villi. So it looks something like this. We see this green structure. Green structure is called the lacteal, and it's basically a part of the lymphatic system. So we don't have to deal with this. So you see this wall right here. It is called the epithelium, and they are comprised of epithelial cells. So we have this monosaccharides waiting here to get into the blood. You see this artery? It's a blood going in. They absorb all the nutrients and then flow out from here. So we'll zoom into one part of this epithelium and see what actually happens. So we have Mr. Glucose, Mr. Galactose, and Mr. Fructose waiting to get absorbed into the blood. Now, in order for glucose, galactose, and fructose to get absorbed into the blood, they have to pass through this epithelial cell, and they are special transport protein carriers. So they have to pass through these carriers into the blood. Now there is a special transporter called sodium. So what sodium does is, he's in good terms with glucose and galactose. So it's going to help glucose and galactose to pass through these channels and into the blood. But sodium and fructose are not good friends. So sodium is not going to help fructose. So fructose has to do an entire journey on its own. Therefore, the rate of absorption of glucose and galactose is far greater than that of fructose. I'm going to explain about fructose in the later videos which I'm going to make on fructose. So the blood now from the small intestine is going down here to the hepatic vein, entering the liver. Oh, I didn't name this. This is the liver. Okay. So now the blood enters the liver. From the small intestine, it goes into the liver. Inside the liver, we have special lobules. So these are hexagonal structure. So I'm going to zoom in one of these lobules. So you see the blood here coming from the small intestine, and this is the other pathway for the blood coming from the heart. So only 25% of the blood into the liver comes from the heart, but 75% of it comes from the small intestine. That's why the liver is so important. The liver absorbs all the nutrients and even the toxic waste, toxic that we eat. It first goes to the liver and then goes on to the rest of the body. So once it comes to the hepatic portal vein into the lobule, you see these small channels. So both this blood mix and they flow into this channel and drain into this central vein. This is called the central vein. So when your glucose is going through this channel, we have these hepatocytes at the adjacent side of the channel. They absorb the glucose and store them as glycogen. So this is a storage form of glucose in our body, and it's a polysaccharide. I'm going to come to glycogen later. So once the blood passes through this channel, drains into central vein, it goes down and comes out into the systemic circulation. That means the blood now goes to your heart. From the heart, it goes to the lungs where it gets the oxygen, and then the lungs comes back to the heart, and then it is pumped to the rest of your body. Now, this blood over here is rich in nutrients and oxygen.